Welcome, everyone. I want to call to order the meeting of the Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 Landmarks Commission. Or you've got the roll.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 8th meeting?
I'll move.
Anyone?
I'll second.
John seconds. Any additions, corrections, updates, any needed changes? Hearing none. Minutes are approved. So moving on to, we have no appearances, moving on to unfinished business.
We need to take roll or vote on the approval of the minutes.
All right. So all in favor of approving the minutes of the February 8th meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Unfinished business. I think John's got me on a challenge here to get through this quickly. I'm skipping over things. Unfinished business. Discussion and possible action regarding a land acknowledgement prior to landmark commission meetings. All right, we had discussed some of these in the past, and they're in your packet. And I believe, Rick, if I'm not mistaken, you've got another to submit, is that correct?
Well, I drafted this.
Mm-hmm. So this would be on page 8 of 21 in your packet.
So this was based primarily on what the University of Wisconsin did. I pretty much cribbed it from them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I added the last thing, which I haven't seen in other models. But I did see an article that talked about Janice Rice and her feelings about being on Ho-Chunk land. So I cribbed it pretty much from a quote from her. And I felt something of that sort, you know, making it Monona specific and making it inviting, welcoming for Ho-Chunk members to do whatever they want here in Monona. So that part was my creative addition.
I really like it.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have a thought on that? Or any other part of the acknowledgement, really?
I have a different thought.
Fast.
I find it could be confusing if every commission or committee in the city, and I don't know how many there are, but if they all came up with their independent statement, I feel that this should come down from the top. You know, like city council, in my opinion, should, if the city wants to do this, should create some statement, and it could be the one you wrote. And then that should be, you know.
Well, I posed that question earlier.
I think there was discussion of making a motion to recommend this to city council.
To city council, or, okay,
That is
never mind.
absolutely okay. And I think it's very fitting that it comes from this committee. And if there is well, that's
I
my
didn't mean to
job.
rehash it.
That's my job. Is there a motion? Well, first off, I mean, well, is there a motion to discuss sending this to council? Or
Sending this
a
written.
motion to, is there a motion to send this acknowledgement to council as it stands? Or do we have some alterations to make?
This is on page 6.
On page 8 of 21, yeah. So what the
Does
only,
anybody need a paper copy?
the one thing that I thought, which I really enjoyed the last phrase, and I wonder if the word return or the word like we return, we invite members of the Ho-Chunk Nation to return to their homes or to live and work and play in Monona, or to welcome them back, or we welcome, or something to acknowledge that they it's not that we're just welcoming, it's like we're welcoming back, like we welcome return.
I feel like saying this is saying right now they're not welcome and they need to come back. Or,
Yeah.
if we didn't say you're invited, then stay. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a weird.
Would we say something like, is an apology needed?
No, I think that would be better to say the city of Monona shares the mission or something like that of the Ho-Chunk.
I like how the UW-Madison says they respect their inherent sovereignty.
Something like that.
Say that again?
The last lines of the UW-Madison says, today UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation.
Yeah.
Along with the 11 other First Nations.
This would really be a wonderful overture, especially in light of the DEIB plan that's being implemented and working its way through the city. This is I would be very happy and proud to present this to council and to recommend that there be an acknowledgement before each council meeting and perhaps this one.
Sure, I think that's fine.
And
If we want to kick it up, kick
I'm
it over,
also
kick it sideways.
not against the concept of, I don't know, I just, is there the need to acknowledge that a wrong was committed and we are, like, I think Rebecca's line from the university sort of gets to this point that we're recognizing their sovereignty. Or do we?
Well, I guess the only difference between us and the university in terms of this is that they're a statewide organization, so they would recognize all the Native American tribes, whereas we're on Ho-Chunk land, and I think our responsibility is primarily to them.
Oh, that's what I meant. I didn't mean to recognize all. It was the word that it was
The respect.
respect of their, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you feel an additional line is necessary.
Kind of it's the same line of Dane County communities, they say the same thing. They respectfully acknowledge our First Nation.
If someone wants to take this and
Okay,
add a line,
let me just write that down then and maybe we can capture it. So what I'm hearing is the city of Monona, can you say that again, Rebecca?
Oh,
Something,
respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation.
there's something else. Something else that you just read, but could be wrong. Sorry about checking. Acknowledges,
Oh, we recognize the secret land. See, I like also that in the Monona land acknowledgement ceremony, they say we recognize the sacred land upon which Monona exists. And you don't really say that in this.
it's nice. There's something, so we respect their sovereignty, we recognize the sacred land. Is there anything we want to say about acknowledging past wrongs? Acknowledging past aggressions and wanting to
I think we should look forward.
take responsibility? I
I think
mean,
we should look forward,
why do you feel that way?
because I think we should look forward and look for a positive instead of trying to always be apologizing. And that's a personal feeling.
Of
I think
course,
we need to be moving forward and encourage them as a community to become reinvested in the community.
point taken, let me challenge that.
Sure.
Can healing begin without apologies?
Sure, I think so. That's personal.
Sure, sure.
So,
Yeah, I feel like every other community does recognize the injustices.
I mean, I think this blends over into like broader discussions of, you know, reparations. I'm not suggesting reparations. I'm just saying that the acknowledgement of past injustices is really, I think, necessary if we are to expect or hope members of this nation to accept this acknowledgement with sincere. When we first decided to embark on just, you know, looking into acknowledgements, my concern was, let's not do it half-assed. Let's like make sure that if we do it right, and it is not just seen as a bunch of white people getting on a bandwagon because we want to be seen as being, you know, in the right or progressive. I mean, we really need to look inside ourselves and make it meaningful. Otherwise, there is the risk of doing harm.
This one I kind of agree with John in saying this should come down from city council, where if you look at Madison and Stoughton, these are both from their common councils. And they're like proclamations.
So they were not recommended to council by any committee.
I mean, I don't
I mean,
know.
they could have been, and
They could
that's
have
what
been,
I'm
but
saying.
These are like whereas. These are all
But it's not
resolved by the common council. These
But
are
it's-
resolutions being made.
right. But what we're entertaining is an acknowledgement that would be spoken before all meetings, correct?
Yeah, I guess one doesn't preclude the other, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, correct. We don't need a one-time reading of a resolution.
Oh,
Well, I mean, it would be perfectly fine, but I thought maybe we were doing something a little different. I'm perfectly happy if members of this room are not prepared to like have a deeper discussion about this. We can absolutely table it or call in perhaps members of the Monona ARC, the members of the DEIB group. We could just start that way. We could have it come from that group. I'm perfectly okay with that also.
I'm gonna agree with John also that I think that we should suggest this be taken up by council and be a top-down type of acknowledgement for then all the commissions.
So are you suggesting that the city council, so somebody has to bring it to council?
Right.
And I would be happy to be that person, and I can work with another alder to be that person.
Sure. And I think that's a good way of doing it,
Okay.
just be a conduit to get it there
Sure.
and then see what happens.
Yeah. Another way is for me to say, this is a recommendation from the Landmarks Commission, which could be a wonderful way for this commission to have some recognition. It's not necessary. It doesn't have to be there to get the job done. Two ways to do it. So then is the recommendation that the council adopts the acknowledgement for their own meetings, or that the council does that and asks all committees and commissions to also have an acknowledgement? Is that what you're saying, Anne?
Well,
That
no,
the
that
council-
would be up to the commission, to the council to
Yeah.
decide.
Okay,
So we're just asking them to possibly have this be as other entities of government are doing, could they do this also? And then it's up to them to decide whether it's just at their meeting or they want it to preside over all the meetings. I mean, does that include the fire department? Does that include public? You know what I'm saying?
exactly, yeah.
Exactly, so
Yeah.
you have to have the council decide who's having that then said, or is it just print it on a paper then that's at the top of the heading.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. Okay. Is there any more discussion on this, or was that where we're landing, that we want to, that I'll work with another alder, if I can think of any? I don't know, Rick, do you know any? And
Oh,
we could work together to bring this to council
Yeah,
and see what happens?
and see what they say,
Okay, that sounds fantastic.
because then we're drawing on more resources then.
Totally, yeah. And we can also pull in, Rick and I can also pull in other folks too, maybe. All right,
After April 18th.
yeah,
exactly. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? Exactly. All right, number 5B, discussion and possible action regarding 2023 commission scope of work. In your packet, that
do you
is,
have a paper copy? I
Yes.
Be easier.
starting on page 14 and 21. And thank you, Thor. At our last meeting, it was suggested that we put in some timelines and the names of leads and a little bit of a description about what it entails, and that's fantastic. Is there, Thor, is there any need to sort of adopt the document itself, or are we just here to check in on progress for certain assignments?
Yeah, I know we had adopted it last year, so I
Okay,
included
let's
it in
just-
case we
yeah.
want to adopt it and make it official.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adopt this document as our scope of work? Are there any corrections, anything that's been omitted, misassigned?
Well, I guess-
Deadlines that maybe,
I mean, there's a lot of things here for May 2023.
I know. Yeah.
Are we still in a position to do all that?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
And most of these things are on the agenda tonight.
okay.
Rick, unless you have any specific concerns, I know there's something there with your name on it, and I know you've been a little busy, but
I think we're doing well
Okay.
on that international style
Yeah.
project. So I think we're good there.
all right.
And then plan outreach strategies. Honest with you, I'm not quite sure where that's gonna go. I guess maybe you and I could talk about that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about Historic Preservation Month later on the
Okay.
agenda too.
All right,
I think the only thing in the timeline we've kind of surpassed is the Frostwoods event.
Yeah.
I don't know if that needs to be on there anymore.
You know what, I think it should be added.
Or maybe change what's
it's
in the
an
timeline.
accomplished thing, so I guess we can just mark that it's done.
But to have it there and then mark it, yeah, that would be,
Something,
yeah, I think that's important to
But I
show.
think
I mean,
there's
it's
still-
ongoing that we're gonna pursue it still, I guess, so we want to
Yeah.
maybe change that. We already have the event.
But there's an ongoing promotion
Mhm.
issue as well.
Mhm.
Where am I missing it?
It's under National Register outreach long-term timeline.
Got it. Oh, there it is. It's in the description. Okay.
Not so long term.
That's wonderful. It's just wonderful to check that off and just to show the work being done. That's great. Okay. Any other changes? No? In that case, is there a motion to accept this scope of work for
I will move to
2023?
accept this.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Fantastic. So then. Or did you want to just go right through? Well, let's go to 5C then. Discussion and possible action regarding landmark site marker cleaning.
Yeah, so when we left this item at our last meeting was I was gonna try and find other bids. And I reached out to a few local monument contractors, I suppose, Peckman Memorials and B&B restoration. They don't provide this kind of service, and they didn't have any recommendations for who could. I also reached out to the State Historical Society for any recommendations. They had no one either, so.
How about a cemetery?
But no,
Call
so-
us- No, I'd call, what's the one down, on Region,
Forest Hills.
call
Well-
Forest Hills.
I guess what I would say is that you've done your due diligence.
But that's the only other one I could think of that
Sure,
would be maintaining markers, right?
Right,
Yeah,
you're correct. And to Rick's point, since due diligence has been,
yeah.
we may not need any more work. Okay.
The costs far exceed
Yeah.
what Craig is.
Right, so the cost to replace markers is anywhere from about $1,200 to $3,000. And yeah, Craig is what his quote is $450 to do the cleaning for one and demonstrate. I reached out to him and he confirmed that his methods will work on bronze or aluminum, whatever the material is made out of. There was discussion of having a guarantee at the last meeting, which he was hesitant to, give any kind of guarantee, but he's confident in his methods, I suppose.
And his price is still good.
Yes, the price is still $450 and we have just over $1,600, like $1,608 in the book sales fund that can be applied to this cost.
This is to clean one, and it says the lead is a volunteer group, so if he cleans this one, who's going to clean the rest?
Volunteer. I think me and whoever I can bring along.
I'd be happy.
So do
Yeah.
we need to worry
mean,
about
I-
this marker with the new construction on that corner?
Well, we'll get into that, I
Okay, sure,
guess.
I can do that.
That's,
We can
we're waiting
Yeah,
to
no,
hear
Yep, that's
what, if
fine.
anything, the
Yeah, we don't
Require-
anticipate groundbreaking there until the early fall at the earliest. And the planning department will be coordinating with Public Works to have the rock moved to the Dean House temporarily.
Mhm.
All that construction is going on.
But I guess my thought is that they're really gonna have a bright new entrance for the bank on the corner. Last design I saw.
Oh, that
Can't
whole
have a
corner's
question,
gone,
but
don't you know that?
This, the particular marker that Craig gave the quote for is the Blooming Grove Town Hall marker,
Oh, okay.
which is going to be impacted by the Bloom project. But that's,
Theoretically, any marker could be used as a demonstration, correct?
I think so.
We could
Any-
go
any
down
of the soil
to
ones.
Stonebridge Park, we could just be there and clean up that one as a demo, right?
We could,
Must it be this particular marker, which is in the middle of construction and so much other?
well, I guess my thought is that it's gonna have to be moved to accommodate the construction anyway.
But
Right.
that's not
That's
our,
not on
that's
the
not our
agenda.
issue. That's like, that's part of the precise implementation and plan of the whole construction of the
Has that
area.
been done?
No,
I think
No?
they're in the middle. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't poured over it.
I think it's unrelated to this.
I really do
particular
it too, yeah.
agenda item
Yeah.
right
So
now.
the question on the table is, do we move forward and have Craig demo the process? Or do we,
Yeah,
or do we move forward and contract with him? Is that
Right.
really the question?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
For
So-
one marker.
For one marker and
Yeah,
then volunteer group would
Yep.
do the rest.
So we need a motion?
A motion, is there a motion to move forward with hiring Craig to demo one marker and then have a volunteer group take it from there?
I would repeat the word you said in a motion, if I
By
can do it.
Jen,
I'll second.
a second by Rick, yay. Awesome, okay,
Vote.
vote carries. Oh, all in favor?
Uh,
Aye, thank you, great, all right.
Okay.
Just so you know.
All right.
Very good. Next, item number 5D, discussion and possible action regarding Spring Haven Pagoda. Or can I let you?
Sure. So at our last meeting, there was a request for staff to reach out to Kurt Strauss again, who prepared the 2022 report, to solicit an estimate for drawing up some engineered plans for his two potential restoration options. His goal is $6,400 for the drawings, which would include a site visit and questions from the commission. Yesterday, some of the commission members took a visit to the pagoda just to observe the general state of the pagoda and the surroundings. I don't know if Rick or Ann, you were both there. Do you have any thoughts or comments that you want to share?
Well, we talked about,
Look, Ann, you want?
No, I'm letting Rick, because I think Rick's gonna formulate it just right.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's all right.
I just didn't want, I
was
wanted
just
to give you.
like,
a
didn't want
Where
to
do we
step on
start?
your
Where do we
toes.
start? Do we start at the lake shore? Do we start at the, yeah,
We start with the pagoda.
yeah, start at the
Yeah,
pagoda
I will
then.
say, we had questions about grading.
Yeah.
I did speak with Jake Anderson, the Parks Department Director today. He was very adamant that grading is done. There won't be any changes to the grading at the pagoda site, and that's to protect it from lake levels. The one thing the Parks Department could do to help us out is dig out some of the muck that's in the well, essentially. Later on in the summer, when they have more time, it's open to just clearing out the spring area a little bit, essentially. But the rest of the grading from the pagoda down to the lake is essentially, change that.
I guess my concern is exposing enough of the well so that we can get to the stones that need some work. So we do have to clear away a perimeter around so that we can work what now is subsurface. And I wouldn't necessarily categorize that as regrading, but that was one thing we talked about on site was
I think that was-
allowing for some kind of water course
Yeah.
for the water that comes out of the well.
Yeah, so I
And
think
so,
taking out the foundation would be part of any work to restore it if it needed that foundation work. But a water course wouldn't necessitate that regrading that Parks Department told me they cannot do.
well, I don't know if we're asking them to do it.
We're just, correct, we're not, but it's just a point of information that they
Right.
would not be an
Yeah.
option. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, you're
so
correct.
I'll just say, I think we should focus this discussion
Right.
on the structure itself.
Correct.
Given that information from Parks and that grading and landscaping or the water course. Unrelated to the state of the pagoda and the possibility for restoration of the structure.
I hear what you're saying.
One thing I was, Thor was kind enough to sort of get me up on the conversation, something that I learned, which I thought was really helpful, is that Craig Deller, felt that up until this point, we've sort of, we've approached this with an engineer perspective, and he suggested more of a conservator approach.
Did you talk to
Would you like, I did not,
Oh,
I
okay.
did not. So would this be
Yeah,
appropriate
that's,
to talk
yeah.
about at this point? Like,
right,
go
so,
ahead.
so
Should we talk about what Kurt said first, since you already brought that up?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll leave it up to you. If you, I think the context of
Or do you want?
Craig could also help the conversation, but.
Yeah.
So Craig Deller is a conservator who we will be hiring to help restore the landmark markers.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Okay.
Based in Madison, he's working right now with the city of Madison to restore the Annie Stewart Fountain.
Which is concrete.
Which is concrete and marble, I believe. So staff reached out to Craig to explore his expertise and his opinion on the pagoda.
Who's staff? You?
Me,
Okay. Just one.
Doug and I.
Okay.
So I met Craig on site at the pagoda yesterday, and we, just discussed the state of the pagoda and the possibility for restoration from the point of a conservator rather than an architect or engineer. He felt pretty strongly the pagoda was in good enough shape to restore, that the foundation was sound, given there's no lean or evidence of sagging in the structure itself. And that if we treat the structure as more of a sculpture, then you wouldn't necessarily need engineered or architectural drawings for the repair. And that someone like Craig, a conservator, could create a treatment plan and do that restoration. He thought that if we dig into some historical records to find out types of concrete that were used in the late 19th century when it was built, and then do an actual analysis of the concrete, and we could match the aggregate and color pretty closely. And that then we could scrape away all the loose debris and any patch material from previous attempts to restore it. Remove some of the metal rods that are sticking out, just kind of cut them away. Leave the exposed wire, and then drill in some stainless steel or nylon dowels every couple inches along the perimeter. That would then allow us to build some kind of support form and then pour that concrete in once we're able to match it. For all the cracks and delamination and the separation of the roof from the support columns, he thought that epoxy injections would repair those. And then some kind of coating could be applied to waterproof the structure. That would have to be commercially available material. So we'd have to be careful about matching that to make sure it didn't change the appearance too much. He did acknowledge the footings, where those have eroded a bit, and felt that those could be recast as well. And he felt like our budget was reasonable for this work as well. But I have no kind of cost estimate for what it might cost. He just felt the budget was reasonable.
That budget is for a totally different type of work, so I'm concerned that if he knows that budget, he's gonna post something that is beyond what it really should be.
So we've
Because we went this route, I told you this, already, we went this route prior to the pandemic. And we didn't get enough bids, and the bids that we got were like $20,000. I could probably find them in like 2015 minutes,
When you
but
say this route, do you mean the conservatory route?
yes,
Okay.
yes, we went this route initially. It was hard to find people to do it, but so that's my only concern, is saying a $65,000 budget is good. I can, yeah, for sure, for that type of work.
Mhm.
But I would make sure that it's not charging 65,000, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, we didn't talk contracts or bids or anything. Anything approaching that amount, we would have to put out for proposal for an RFP. But he was interested and potentially willing to give him 2 months to create a treatment proposal essentially for us that would give us that kind of feasibility of this work and potential and a potential cost, right? So I wanted to bring this up to the commission today before a decision was made about Kurt's bid, because that bid is 10% of the available contract for something that might not be needed if we go the route of a conservator.
If an RFP goes out and what's the gentleman's name?
Craig Deller.
Craig is the only submitter.
Mhm.
Are we allowed to accept that?
Yep.
Okay.
Great question.
Yep, statute requires us to select the lowest responsible bidder, essentially.
So is the question whether or not we can wait 2 months to give Craig enough time to submit a proposal?
Is there a rush? What do you mean, can we wait 2 months?
Well, we have a bid from Kurt Strauss to do drawings for 6,400.
Well, we have an email that gives us.
So the question is, before we respond to Kurt, should we give Craig time to put in his proposal, his treatment plan?
I think that's what we're, yeah, I think that's my understanding of the question on the table as well. Is it
Already-
yours though?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's, I think what the commission should consider discussing right now is whether you could make a motion to table the discussion if you want to wait for Craig to put together some kind of plan.
All right.
But we don't have a guarantee from him that he can and will do that.
So the decision on the table is whether we hold off on Kurt and explore this alternate that Craig is proposing,
Right, or we still want to move forward.
or do we still move forward with?
Does he propose to do all the work in place?
Yep. Except for maybe replacing the missing finial, he thought could be, a replica could be 3D printed and then that could be
Brought
cast
to the
and then
site.
brought to the site.
But all the work would be done on the site.
Yeah, he thought maybe like
Scaffolding,
using
yeah.
2x12s,
Okay.
the same kind of scaffolding and form could be created, that then the concrete, once we could match it, would be cast into that.
Has the city contracted with him before? You know,
No,
He's contracted a lot with the city of Madison.
And he's currently doing some work in Thailand, you said?
Yeah,
he was doing
Very
some work in
interesting.
Thailand, yes. Observing some human burial boxes.
Yeah, he seems more than qualified.
I guess it's hard for me personally to respond based on things discussed in 2015 that may have gone down a similar path. Not knowing that,
Yeah.
I would say this seems like I think our group, I know I personally had structural integrity questions, which I think have been answered.
Yes.
And knowing that it's not a structural, which I might personally debate, but knowing that someone with a PE license said it's structurally sound, I have a little concern with messing with an artist or a sculptor messing around with foundations, but that's a separate thing, because that's a structural issue. I guess this option seems logical, probably the most inexpensive. And we get our pagoda back. Now, I'm assuming he'll guarantee his work in some way, or, there'll be a contract, right, with him. That you can't get halfway done and leave and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Correct.
I think this is the more appropriate route to go. I just think that we should reach out with some sort of RFP like we've done in the past, because I don't think we can just handpick who we want to do the city's work.
But Kurt gave us a proposal, right,
We're a different type of work.
without an RFP.
So
Yeah.
this, wouldn't be hiring him to do the work necessarily, but he expressed willingness to put together.
No, I think that's totally fine. If he wants to put a proposal together, but I think he proposes doing this, and then the city has to put that out to bid,
The actual work.
the actual
But
work.
yeah, right,
We're doing a project right now with the city of Madison. And our fees are well over $2 million. And that was not put out for bid. So the city, there was a strong reason. And I think when you have an artist like this that specializes in something, it's like a surgeon, right, in a way. And there might be ways for the city council to say, this is so specific and so unique that we're just just gonna hire him and he falls within our budget, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
That might be an approach.
I think that would be fine, but my concern would be the people that have looked at it in the past and bid to do this
Okay,
type of
all right.
work in
Well,
the
I
past.
didn't know that.
Have been to do the conservatory work.
Yes.
Okay, so there are more experts in the neighborhood? Okay. Well, that- Did he give you any sense of timing? Like this is a 6-month process, it's a 2-month process, it's a
No,
2-year process?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
He said, like, likely you're a year out if there is. Because there were questions about grading and landscaping yesterday. I
Okay.
asked him about that and he said, well, that would need to be done before. But then I had the conversation with Jake today that it just seemed like that is just not going to happen. So when we started talking around that, then he just said, if you give me like 6 to 8 weeks to think about it, I could get a treatment proposal written up potentially, but we'll need to follow up with him.
And I assume he would do the work in warmer months, he's not gonna work over the winter.
Likely, yeah.
Okay.
And you said he's still working on a project now for the city of Madison.
As far as I know,
So the question on the table is whether we go ahead and ask Craig to give a proposal? Is that the question on the table, or are we talking about an RFP for conservatory?
Definitely not RFP for conservator at this point.
Okay,
I don't think we're prepared to do that.
all right. So is there a motion to have Thor get back to Craig and ask Craig to move forward with his offer?
If I were Craig and if Thor approached me with that, I would say, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Am I getting the?
Am I
you know-
getting the
you know what I
job?
mean? Are you
Exactly.
putting this out for RFP in 6
Exactly.
months? You
Exactly.
know, I don't want to waste my time, even though I'm assuming if RFP went out, he would respond. Did he respond the last time?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
yeah.
No, I don't
I
think
don't
we did.
remember the name, no.
So,
So I can reach out to him and, if any discussion of money comes up, then it would have to come back to the commission for approval to hire him. If we need to select him for a contract to just do this treatment proposal, then we would need that approval from the commission at our next meeting.
So we're asking him to give us his approach without a fee? Is that what we're asking him to do?
I think it's gonna be similar to
'Cause it
what he
could be
did
given-
here, it's gonna be a 2-pager, 3-pager
Okay,
that gives us a treatment plan.
I wouldn't want him giving too much of his intellectual property away, you know what I mean?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Right, and, he was hesitant to
Yeah, that would be.
give any
that would be
indication of his time or any potential cost. Right, but he was open to just exploring this for us, like to Rick's point, I think it would be something similar to a
Okay.
1 or 2 page document. Potential treatment options, his proposal for how that would work and a cost estimate. And then we can use that. Make a decision from there about RFPs and.
I would suggest asking him for that right after you tell him we approve that. I mean, right? I mean, so we will have a
Exactly.
contract with them if we do that.
Right,
All right.
So we're gonna ask for,
Should we,
Is this something that we can table and ask staff to reach out for more information?
Do we need,
Yes.
what more information were you thinking?
The information we're talking about.
the treatment
That,
proposal?
one of those.
so yeah,
So are you-
His treatment plan,
Yeah.
what it would be.
essentially what I
That's a
did
really
with
good
Kurt
idea.
in between his last 2 meetings.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, I think.
I think it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So if
But it's not like
Craig,
a motion, it's like
so
staff
Craig,
needs to.
so Craig put together this for the marker cleaning. The assumption, or at least one assumption on the table, is that Craig would probably just put together something like this for the pagoda.
I think so. Yeah, I'm
Might be
sorry
a
that
little
there's some
more
uncertainties
involved
here,
in that,
just.
but yeah,
Right.
Just on contact.
Right,
with
yeah,
him
it's not
yesterday.
exactly a
fine.
flat cleaning, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for getting in contact.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So do we need to vote on this, or I think,
To Rebecca's point, I don't think so. I think it can just be a request of staff to seek information.
Okay, sounds good.
Can we make a motion for request of staff?
We're kind of getting. fun
You'll
with
make
that,
them,
yeah.
you'll make the minutes longer because they'll have to put in all the motions and the voting.
We'll circle back.
Oh, promising.
Mhm. All right, next item on the agenda, number 5, letter E, National Historic Preservation Month planning. And in our, let's see,
Got the same plan second time in the packet here. Is that the one we should look at
page
for
20
outreach?
of 21. Yeah, little spreadsheet there of all the things that we might do. A lot of that stuff is already underway. It's great, in progress.
Yeah, at the last meeting, we had talked about putting together a spreadsheet work
Mhm.
plan.
Mhm.
So I did
Thank
create that. Just trying to get to it.
Lord knows that I like my spreadsheets.
So as I put together with some of the ideas we've talked about around Historic Preservation Month, you know, who is assigned to the task, a due date, this was just a rough estimate. We could fiddle with those and then the status of those tasks. So now if, how you want to take this, Teresa, that we can just go through.
Well,
one.
what I would just instinctually do is I would figure out as a group which of these we are going to do still, if we feel that we still need to want to take that on. This, we need a name in the column called, no name in that column, it doesn't get done. So, for example, promoting the web pages, what might that entail for?
PSAs or the newsletter potentially, you know, or maybe one of the like kind of news blasts on the front page of the website.
Okay,
We can do some of those things.
because the recording of PSAs on VMO, that's a separate line, yeah. So promote the web pages, you mean like on the front page of the Monongalia, there's like a National Historic Preservation Month, that
Right.
takes you to a dedicated
Yep.
page, yeah, for sure. So I think, would it be appropriate to say that the description of that task would be to come up with the text that would appear on that site?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then work with you to post it, right? So is there anyone here that feels drawn to that as opposed to some other, there's others that we can go through. Record and air PSAs and BMO, I think this is just probably going to be maybe 3 PSAs, 30 seconds long. It can be any number of topics. We could even have more than 3. I mean, you could take each house in the
Yeah.
brochure and
Yeah.
say 15 seconds about that house.
Mhm.
You know, did you know that or even something, did you know that Monona has X number of federal and X number of, you know, state landmarks? Just very simple.
Yeah,
Visit blah, blah, blah on mymonona.com to learn more.
sure.
You know, just things like that. It could be super easy. Then
Yeah,
for the
I could definitely help with that.
And then printing the landmarks map, that's already in progress, as is the work with the library. Thank you, Thor, that's fantastic. Promote local landmark books. Would that be together with the library?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I've been working with
Okay.
one of the contacts at the library. I don't know her name right now, but she has a list of all of the books that we bought with the CLG funds from last year, and she's
Right.
placed those on hold. And I also asked her to place a hold on the copy of the landmarks book, but we still need to maybe create some kind of just note that says, hey, if you're interested in this book, you can buy it over at City Hall.
got it.
And
So-
the Historical Society, right?
I don't know, actually,
thought they sold it.
at the Blooming Grove, okay.
So you'd have the display at the library, and as part of the display would be these books with a note that said, hey, you like it? Here's where you can get it.
Yep.
Got it, okay.
Yep.
All right. Organizing a walking tour, what are the thoughts? Do we have enough time to do that?
No.
No.
Me neither.
I thought there
was-
was that Badger Walker one also, right?
There
Remember?
might be something in print.
Yeah.
There might be.
I think there's one out there and
Yeah.
a map and everything too.
It would be great to do that some year, but just not this year. And then, so let's just, in the status column, we're gonna say, not gonna do it. Or tabled, or whatever you wanna call it. And then for the last one, find volunteers, promote landmark cleaning. Yep, we've started to talk about that.
That'd be me and Wyndwood.
And Teresa, you can put my name on that too. Okay, and then for a due date, do we have a thought on when we might wanna do that? Or do we need to wait for Craig and we're kind of all?
Yeah, I think we'd have to coordinate with Craig.
Yeah, we'll see when we're able to do it.
Yeah, of course, okay. So we'll have a date on that soon. So Anne, Rick and Teresa are on that.
You can have me.
And yahoo, yeah, it's a party. Okay, and then,
As long as it's not like 6 AM.
6:01.
and then, so then circling back to the top, promoting the webpage is what that means again, is just coming up with some content that Thor can post. I'm recording PSAs. And then Thor's got the next two, as well as the
And I'll
next
do-
three.
Yeah,
And the walking tour we're not gonna do. So really all we need to do is writing the text for the website, writing and recording some PSAs and cleaning some markers. Is anyone particularly drawn to one of these wonderful things?
PSA is a public
Service
service.
announcement.
yeah, so right across the
Do you
hall.
listen to WVMO at
I
all?
do not.
Oh,
I don't really either.
wow.
I don't know how.
You might have to turn in your Monona card to
98.7.
do that.
On the radio?
Yeah,
WVMO.
I'll listen to the radio.
The voice of Monona.
Okay.
You should, yeah. So
So it's an
PSA,
ad.
so it's an advertisement and and VMO is really sort of
Okay.
known for, it's kind of like songs in between PSAs as opposed to PSAs in between songs. It's kind of a funny station in that way, but
Okay.
in an adorable way. There's PSAs from the Girl Scouts, you name it, everybody's got their little, here's what's going on at the library, just very community oriented.
Yeah, you could talk about international style homes.
You do all that
No one
stuff.
wants to.
You could do a half-hour podcast. but-
Mhm, there you go.
We can also,
Hold on.
And a
another,
walking tour.
and another thing, it's very easy to do is Joe Martin is one of the folks that works at VMO. And if somebody here would like to talk about international style homes, just using that as an example only because you said it, not because we must do it, but you would write up like half a dozen FAQs, go into the studio, he would throw the questions at you, you'd answer them conversationally, and then he would later go back and edit it into PSAs. He later would go back and say,
Okay.
here's something from, Rick Bernstein of the land or whatever,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
So we
also
could do
very
one on
interesting.
Trying to find volunteers to help clean the
You
plaque.
could totally do that.
And that might be appropriate.
You can, exactly,
Someone could.
someone could do that. If there was any particular aspect of working with landmarks that you were drawn to, for example, John, you could have an interview, a sit-down chat with Joe, and no, you don't want to do that, okay. Okay, so,
I guess I would unhinge that last one, find volunteers and promote landmark marking as part of Historic Preservation Month, because we're not gonna do it by May at this point, I don't think.
okay, so just still do it, but not as part of,
Mhm.
I agree, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. So really then, there's just the web page, PSAs, and Thor, can you also add the My Monona e-newsletter would be also something that
Yes.
we'd want to do? And
And those are due on
the
Friday, this Friday.
Yeah, so,
What's due this Friday exactly?
submission for the My Monona e-newsletter.
From
So you can
one-
still-
the one thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, so you can subscribe to that, it comes in your inbox.
Is there something in that email I sent you that has the preservation month tools that you could use?
The concrete one that you said.
No, I I'll resend it.
Okay,
Are you
It's
thinking
for
that
the
could
National
be?
Trust?
okay, yeah.
It's out of
we can do that.
Preservation Month toolkit.
Okay, I can look at that. There's also, you probably promoted this last newsletter. I can copy and paste.
Dig up.
Yeah,
Okay, so you'll do that. And that also probably starts you off on the webpage as well. And then.
Yeah.
And then, do you want to do the PSAs with me? Then Rick and Teresa will do the PSAs and we'll wrangle somebody who's not in the room today with us. We'll get Brandon there or something. I don't know. If that's her thing. And we'll get that done. So we've got the newsletter and the webpage pretty much under control.
Yep.
Rick and I'll do the PSAs. We'll clean the markers some other time, not as part of Historic Month. No walking tour. Library stuff. Do you need any help with the library stuff?
potentially if we need to create some materials for it. But, you know, right now, the display will have the books that are on hold that we bought. You know, letting people know that they can buy the Landmarks book at Blooming Grove Historic Society and at City Hall, and then the landmark map that we're having printed. which
Exactly.
We don't have back from the consultants yet, but we're hoping to by May. We're just kind of in limbo there right now. But once those are printed, I'll have them printed on nice
Yeah.
glossy paper and
Yeah.
NC prints, and we'll put those over at the library.
That's fantastic.
That was also gonna be available on our website, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Would you mind if I went through the list of books we bought and kind of sorted through that a little bit? Because a lot of the books we bought were printed from the Historical Society, but don't really have anything to do with historic preservation.
yeah, somewhere not directly adjacent to preservation, but the commission discuss that if you want, how strict you want to be with the books that are displayed. I mean, similar about like the, you know, like mountains, essentially, the Native American mountains.
That's preservation.
That is.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting
yes.
differentiation that I had not thought of until this moment. So
They're history
national,
related, but they're not
so
preservation.
you're saying that it's about historic preservation. That's what the month of May is about, not landmarks in general.
No.
Well, no,
I get it.
landmarks, yes,
It's a
but,
national,
Yeah,
but there are
So,
lots of books.
I was
that
sort
the
of
society
blending
prints that
the,
aren't about historic preservation.
but
I mean,
cultural
you've seen-
heritage is still just as important.
What?
Cultural heritage.
yeah.
Well, that's why I wanted to go through the list and sort through it a little bit.
I think they're all brand new books and we can promote them. I don't see why we shouldn't promote them.
Could the display say something like May is National Historic Preservation? Here's some information about historical preservation as well as some of the landmarks, and you could make it into
They
both,
did this
right?
course
You
last, they've done this
Mhm.
course
could-
in
You
the
could, you
past,
could do
so
both.
I think they would have had
I
that
would
pulled
trust
out.
the library's
Yeah,
discretion.
I don't,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll leave it up to the commission for what you want to decide with the display, but
What do you
if there are
think?
books that are not
folks?
appropriate,
So I go to the display, can I check out a book or I can't check it out while it's
On hold.
it's on
I
hold,
thought
right?
that's what
Yeah.
you said, that they were placed
think-
on hold.
yeah,
Well,
place
you
on
can
hold
check
to
them
put
out.
it onto the display, but then once they're there, the hold will be
You could
removed.
probably even reserve it and see how these
Yeah.
people go in and reserve books.
Yeah,
For later,
Like,
okay.
No, if it's on the display, you can still check it out.
Yep, they were put on hold like 2 weeks ago.
so that they would
could
be ready for the
display.
display, yeah.
Got it, okay,
Yeah.
all right, cool.
So is there a question about whether we can blend the two, historic preservation, and must we be purists and keep them apart? Or can we just, do you think people in Monona won't really know the difference, or will it matter? Is it important that we educate them? I don't know. I kind of think this is a great opportunity to showcase landmarks, make people
Right.
aware of them,
Right.
How many books are we
piggyback on
talking?
top of it.
I was just.
About-
20-ish.
20, so if we do pare them down, what are we gonna pare down to?
Yeah.
15?
Yeah,
12?
I agree, I agree.
Well, I still like the opportunity to look through the
You
list.
still wanna look through them?
I,
You could meet, you could
I
meet
sent the list
separately.
over after our last meeting.
Was
Do you
it
want me to
in the-
resend it?
No.
One that's bigger and easier to read would be good. It was very, very tiny.
Was it? Okay.
But I think there are other better books in the library that could be just the ones we bought, but
So I think it's not only the ones we bought that would be on display, if I'm understanding this
if
correctly.
we can, I would like to maybe supplement them with books that I think fit a little bit better into historic preservation and archaeology.
Yeah, I'd say feel free to send me any book you find and I'll pass those along to the library.
Okay.
These are all heritage books. I have no problem putting these up
What do you see?
from the list.
Oh yeah, tell me what you're seeing. I don't have it in front.
The
We're
librarian.
gonna sit here and read the whole list.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
maybe what you're reading so I can know what
Because
you're
like we
talking
said,
about.
she's been doing it for.
Is there
The
any
list
more?
of books that,
I know, but I can't see it.
So I think what I'm seeing is that Rick can coordinate with Thor, maybe resend the list. Rick can dig into those books either by researching them with their list or maybe even getting physically the books somehow through Thor. Is that okay? And then we're just gonna go forward with this and we're gonna let the library sort of run with it. And with some guidance from Thor and the books that we bought. All right. It is 5:31. We're gonna get onto new business staff updates. National Register nomination update, Otto and Louise Shader House.
Yeah,
Already
so
done that.
March 23rd, the Schrader House was officially listed on the National Register. It's listed though as the Schrader Bowrod House. Aaron Bowrod lived there at one point and was an artist in E.W. Madison, painter. And then the Willard and Fern Tompkins House, that's the 110 Henua Circle, which we submitted, or consultant presented the submission back in October. That was passed along to the state and they have it in their office. And then we passed along some edits from the commission that they will make changes to before they do their official approval. So that one's sitting with the state right now. Yeah, so
It is kind of cool that we've got one more on the list.
I'm glad we marked it on the map.
I know.
That is
You
so
told me, like,
funny.
it's
That is
it's
so
all but a
funny.
certainty. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So,
Related to that, though, I did want to ask, should we reach back out to the consultant and have the name on the map changed to the Schrader Bowrod House? Right
I
now,
think if
it's,
they haven't done anything,
yeah,
sure. But if they're done,
okay. Let's see what the status is.
Be nice if they were consistent, right? But
so is that a
you're
yes?
saying
Well,
change
the
it.
plaque doesn't say Schrader Bowrod, so.
like, if it's no big deal to change
Get
that
what I'm
part,
saying?
Oh,
Okay,
Get what I'm saying?
yeah.
Because they just made up the name for this.
Locally, it's the Otto and Lou Schrader House, but
Schrader
Is this
Bowrod,
Schrader Bowrod
yeah.
I mean, and most people do know it's the Bowrod
Yeah.
House too. so.
okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to the consultant and see if they can make that change, depending on how
Mhm.
close it done they are.
Thank you.
All right, and next, we've got the Frostwoods Educational Event.
Yeah, so we had the meetings on February 22nd and March 22nd. Between the two, we had maybe 15 people attend, 10 to 15. Attendance was fairly low. But I think successful still. We had pretty good conversations and lots of questions were answered during the presentations. And as far as I know, Frostwoods Homes Association will be moving forward with the vote at the April meeting. Is that true? Okay.
I thought
So,
the meeting I attended in February was very, very good, really informative. I thought the attendance was great, so I'm just guessing what that tells me is that the next one wasn't as highly attended, huh?
Probably a little less.
little less,
Okay,
little less,
okay.
yeah.
I mean, it was really great. It just felt to me like there were really no
I don't think Jim
downsides.
Drager counts either, so.
Yeah, came for fun, I think.
And it was when will the Frostwoods Association be moving? May, May?
No, it's in April.
April, okay.
Meeting is.
Yeah.
April 23rd.
Okay, great. Very good, very good. I'm also wondering, let's see, I don't have let's see, I lost my agenda. Thank you for the alert if something's on it. Yeah, draft landmark map, number 6A.
Yep, so that's still with the consultants. They are making the edits that we requested at the February meeting. Doug and I have followed up with them a couple times the last few weeks. We still haven't heard anything, so we're hoping that we can have it ready by May at some point, so we can get it over to the library, get it here at City Hall and start distributing that.
Is that two-sided?
Yep,
Good.
two-sided. Yeah, it'll be like a trifold pamphlet,
Yeah,
one
good.
side map and the other
Yeah.
side.
And then updates, discussion on the Spring Haven Allen House.
Yeah, so update on Frank Alice House. Andy Kitzlar, who's the president of the Friends of San Damiano, and he also is on the San Damiano Steering Committee. I know that group has been working with the State Historical Society to explore if certain changes were made to the Frank Alice House, if it would restore its eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places. So Andy told me that some materials were submitted to the state, and the state has what they need to review that and make that determination, and they're just
I
waiting
don't
to hear
think
back
it
from the
has been
state.
submitted to the state yet.
Okay,
I think what I understood is that the Landmarks Commission would submit the material to the state for their review.
okay. Andy told me the state has everything they need.
Really?
to
Well,
make
you
it.
can do a form that is not the national nomination. It's a form to find out if it would be eligible to nominate.
Yeah,
So
but-
maybe that's what he did.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. My understanding is it had been submitted to the state.
Okay.
yet.
And maybe, Andrew, there's some confusion
I
with
have
what
no
has been
idea.
submitted.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it is.
Cause I was the one who wrote it.
Right,
Correct.
Oh.
So-
I don't even know about it.
and you've shared it with Andy.
Andy and
Yeah.
Wes.
Yeah.
Well, with Wes, not with Andy, but with
Okay.
Wes and with Teresa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I share it with Thor,
Yeah,
so yeah.
do we want to discuss that in case anything hasn't been submitted?
Yeah, I think it would be good to share with the commission.
So, so Rick, you put together a document that had some, you just stepped through some of the points of the house that you wondered whether changes would be helpful.
Right.
And I think the hesitancy, is that word a good word that I'm thinking, is that we're not sure if, the city has never done this before, right? I mean, the city has never owned a landmark, the way we've owned, with the way this, like the house. So there's just sort of some caution in how we move forward with it. Am I capturing that
I
correctly?
think so, yeah, so, Rick has the three changes, I guess, that we're looking at. That would potentially restore its national register eligibility. Rick worked on that report.
Mhm.
When I
Well,
reached out for
time into it.
updates for Andy, he mentioned that report and said it hadn't been, the materials
So
were
you're getting
submitted to the
conflicting
state
information,
and that they
okay,
have what they need. So
Well,
I'm
that's
not sure if
interesting.
it's been submitted. or not. I
Okay.
feel like Rick would probably know if it had it as an author, but
yeah,
maybe not.
Tend to believe it hasn't yet,
Okay.
but because I only gave
right,
Wes a full copy of it like a few days ago.
oh,
Okay,
So Teresa's copy is like the only full copy that
Okay.
existed up until about a
Okay.
week ago.
so is there any action that is needed here, or?
Clarity.
It's a question of whether or not to share it with the commission and whether or not to petition the State Historical Society to render an opinion
Mhm.
that if A, B, and C was done, would the house then be eligible for listing in the National Register?
if this is not being done by the commission, then I don't think the commission has a say in this.
I think we're talking about determining eligibility for the National Register of the city landmark. And I think we are within our rights to see what we can do.
So is the question, the commission seek this or?
So this brings up something that Thor shared with me. And I'm not finding it right now, but there is written into city ordinance, the roles and responsibility of this body. And I just wanted to make sure that we had that. You sent it in an email. Or, you know what I'll do? I can go to the My Monona website. Hello. I'll just go to the website and we'll look that up. But I think the question on the table is, are we the body that should be submitting this document? Is that what I'm
Anybody
interpreting?
can submit these documents,
Okay,
anybody.
okay.
I'm really confused. Didn't
Well, in that case,
we submit the Otto and Louis Schrader house documents?
Yes. We,
Isn't this a
Nomination.
similar thing?
it is basically.
So why are we questioning out whether we can do it?
I'm,
Or
Because
I
it's
think the-
controversial.
no,
It's not commercial.
I don't think it's
you say
controversial.
controversial?
I don't think it's controversial. I think it's just perhaps
Oh, city
a
owned?
path outside the historically taken path has been started and now confusion is
Right.
now we're in the middle of confusion because we're not sure what we should do because it's different than what we've done in the past.
Can we
So-
offer an
think
olive
we can
branch and do it
discuss.
together?
Should
You
be
know,
next
I
month.
mean,
I guess I'm-
the friends and us together
Yeah.
both would like to have that information. Or is that
So
involving too many
I feel
people?
like this should be an agenda item with information.
So per Rebecca, if this is a document we've submitted in the past, as John says, anybody can submit it. Let's just submit that particular,
No, that's not.
that's not what you're saying,
exactly what
okay.
I'm saying. Anybody can submit a nomination. We paid to have people submit nominations per our grant for certain properties that were whatever. I think this is more of a city owns this, city needs to be okay with submitting this, not the commission,
Mhm.
right? The city owns the property, so we typically seek out the owner and get their permission.
Right, so I think some of the confusion is which body would this come from? You know,
But the city has
But
asked
it's not
us
coming
to
from us, we
nominate
didn't start
properties
this
for,
process.
mhm.
whether it's theirs or not. The city owns no landmark. Aren't there like old bridges that the city owns?
We
Or
own.
not?
We own the Alice
Bridge Road.
House and we
Okay.
own the pagoda.
And Black Bridge.
I mean, that one's.
I guess
But
so.
Black
nothing,
now.
their landmarks are not historic.
Right.
Yeah, neither of them, and
Okay.
none of them are
Okay.
National Register eligible.
Got it.
I guess it would be helpful if everyone got to see the document, so we could talk about it with full knowledge of what we're talking about.
So,
Well, Thor's kind of the owner, right? In a way?
Of what? the document?
property.
No, of the property. I mean, he's a city employee, so he would know whether or not it would make sense to. I mean, I think you're asking, or someone's asking, you might have asked, if we nominate it and the owner says, no, I don't want it to be.
Normally, if we nominate
But
something. we
he's sitting
have
here,
the
he would
owner.
know that the city
But he-
wants to do it.
He can't answer for the
Yeah.
city.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. But he would have a feel,
Okay,
you know, are we wasting our time or not, right?
Right.
so I guess it would be either the Landmarks Commission or the City Council. That would be the one to submit this to the Historical Society for their review.
Or the steering committee also. Right? Same
It's not
thing,
the
you know.
steering
It's San
committee's
Damiano.
purview.
Yeah.
That's just a master planning process.
So they don't have a steering committee?
The steering committee is for the master planning of the
Right, that's what I
property.
mean, yeah,
We,
that's,
they would not.
No.
Do this.
so let me see if I get this straight. So for the process of submitting an application to be a landmark, you go to the homeowner. and the homeowner is involved. In this situation, the city is the owner, and we're not sure who to talk to, because when you ring the doorbell, we don't know who answers the door.
I think you would have to bring this to council.
So I'm wondering, do we exactly? For landmarks brings us to council asking permission, is that what we're asking? Permission if we move forward with?
Yes, but I think that Landmarks has not discussed this whatsoever.
Yeah,
This is being done outside of Landmarks.
right.
So whoever is doing this process should bring it to council. Unless they're
Or bring
bringing
it
it
to
to Landmarks Commission, in which it should be put on the agenda.
I think Rick said maybe the group should see the
Yeah,
Document,
report,
okay.
or-
yeah.
right?
And Andy and Wes and you worked on it. Does it make sense to invite them?
if they are the ones that want to present it for us to do.
Okay.
Can I ask maybe a related question? In the master planning process, do all include the house to stay?
Not all,
No. only
Well,
one.
then, I mean, what if
right,
the master plan gets selected for the house to go away?
They have to
Right.
come to us.
Well, I mean, we'd be wasting time in this process, is what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Or is this
I see.
process trying to preserve the house to stay in a master plan?
maybe,
Or is that the-
maybe, I mean,
Okay.
it would, I
That's
guess
probably
it
more-
probably just is helpful to know whether it's eligible or not, and what would it
Extremely
take,
helpful.
and what would take to make it eligible.
It was deemed ineligible,
Yeah,
I know,
so.
but I guess we're asking a different question. We're asking if A, B, and C was done, would it? be
then would it
eligible?
be eligible, yeah,
So it's a different question.
Yeah.
But to your point, Rebecca, I mean, knowing whether or not that house is eligible is such a foundational issue, of whether or not the house can be safe.
yeah,
It would be so helpful. as the planning process,
Yes.
steering committee, the city, and the landmarks commission to know the answer to that question. Because it's gonna come up in front of us, and then we're gonna say, well,
We didn't know, we didn't do it.
why didn't you do this and this? And they're gonna say, well, why didn't you? I mean, someone has to do it if we're gonna get an answer. And the landmarks commission, as a representative of the city to do this, it sent letters in the past, advocating for the house to be a landmark and to be a National Register property. I think this is similar to what we've done in the past.
I think,
And that those letters are in the packet, if we ever got that.
if this group is gonna be a mechanism to make this advance, then we need to see the report. Because I'm guessing A, B, and C equal money.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, if it's $50 million,
Well, I can tell you that it's not.
well, I know it's not 50 million, but it could be sizable, I don't know. you
It
know?
could be, but I think it's more a question of, is it possible if A, B, and C were done?
Okay.
Then it would be a matter of figuring out what those costs are. But if it is eligible, it could unlock quite a bit of money towards the preservation of the property.
Okay.
So
Except
Where are
that
we?
it's non-income producing.
Is time of the essence for this issue?
well, I think so, because at the last steering committee meeting, there was a lot of talk about making a decision about the house just to simplify the steering committee process. So what was unfortunate is that the architect or the consultant had a lot of information about the potential programming of the house. And the committee didn't have time to hear it. So
But
they,
that was not the final plan, and they're presenting their conceptual plans next week.
I
to
don't
the
know what you
public.
mean by that was not the plan.
Like, there are 3 plans they presented for us to review,
Right,
but
there's
those
one,
are to be presented to the public next week. That was the only intention of reviewing them, is so that we could present them to the public.
but I guess what I'm talking about is a little different. The historic architect for Mid-States had prepared a lot of material about the house and what its potential was for programming. And the steering committee didn't have time to hear it.
Mm.
So there was a lot of potential that the House could have accommodated. It's now not being presented to the public as they look at these
No,
three
they're
options.
also being presented to the public.
Those, what the architect prepared,
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's true. I do not think that's the
I think
case.
regardless, we're not even at a point of talking about the house. Like, this master planning process is just what it is, a master plan that the public can say, yeah, we think that we want to move forward with this, but do you think the city's actually gonna be
Well,
able to do this?
In my hearing of the last meeting, there was definitely a sentiment about we need to decide about the house just so that we can center.
I think there are certain members on the committee that feel that way, but there are not, that is not a majority.
Well, if I could finish. I think there was a move, concerted move to decide about the house. And most of the comments that came at that point were negative. So there is a sentiment, strong sentiment, about removing the house from the equation, just to simplify the process. Whether or not that results in an ultimate decision to keep or
Sure.
to preserve the house, there is a concerted sentiment about removing the house from it.
And it's just another data point for making decisions, you know, it's important.
But
So
but the
it's,
information that had been gathered wasn't presented to the steering committee,
right,
which I think makes it harder for people to understand why we should preserve that.
Yeah.
Because right now it's an empty shell with no real concept behind how to use
would it make sense to do two things? Would it make sense to meet between now and the next meeting, but plan to talk about this more at the next meeting? But I mean, if the questions on the table are, you know, who submit, so, I mean, is there a cost to submitting? And there's not a cost to getting this information. It's just the
No.
cost of someone's time,
it. Right.
and you're willing to put in the time. And as long as we don't step on people's toes, we don't, you know, overstep our role, I don't see the harm in getting
Right.
questions answered. We just don't want to be speaking for others. We have to be, that's where my concern is. I don't really know what the chain of command or decision is in this situation. Do we meet with Thor, me, Andy, you? Is that who we should meet with? What sort of, who has the answers to
I
these
think that this
questions?
should be put on the agenda and that we should be given this information if the Landmarks Commission wants to move forward with this. If you want to move forward with this without the Landmarks Commission, I'm totally for that. But if we are to represent this, then it needs to be on our agenda.
Right,
Yeah, but-
right,
Yeah.
right.
Teresa, I think you're talking about figuring out how to present this to the Landmarks Commission. Right? How to work with the other committee to move forward on this.
I guess, I mean, if that's what we,
I thought
I'm
that's what
sort
you
of
were
lost.
suggesting.
Yes, I just don't want to, I don't know whose responsibility it is, I guess is my point. And I don't want to step on someone else's.
Well, I guess then,
I
It
think
is
it would
6
be
o'clock,
helpful
though.
to, you know, there's confusion about what Andy has done. We should clarify with Andy
Okay.
what has been done, and we can talk,
Okay,
you know, if it's more appropriate to come from
let's
that
just,
our realm, and if it's our realm, we'll put it on the agenda for next month, I'd say.
that makes perfect sense. Okay, in the essence, with time, looking at the time, it's 5:54. So moving on to the last bits of the agenda, I'll just let everyone know that the DEIB, so it's 6B, updates discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion. Did I skip something?
The webinar,
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wrong document, I'm sorry.
that's just a really quick update. I attended a webinar a couple weeks ago from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners on essentially creating a preservation plan. It was the first part of a two-part webinar. Second part is tomorrow. So it's just about what the process is to, you know, set priorities for, like proactive priorities for creating a preservation plan, give the community engagement involved with that. Available a little bit more tomorrow during part 2, but maybe it makes more sense to give another update after part 2. But just trying to get that information now for potential future efforts about preservation planning.
Thank you. Sorry for skipping that. Thank you. All right, so then 6B, updates discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion. I will share something that the plan implementation team continues to meet with the Nehemiah Center with representatives from that organization, and just continues to hash out some priorities and digging deeper into some of the questions that are coming up with really just analyzing the root causes of some issues that we want to address. For 6C, updates on sustainability efforts, I'll just share with everyone that April 15th, the Sustainability Committee in Monona here is hosting an electronics recycling event to sort of kick off Earth Week, Earth Day. If you've got any old electronics in your basement, hard drives, microwaves, air conditioners, refrigerators, any of those sort of difficult to recycle events, you can bring that over to the Monona Grove School District offices, the parking lot off Nichols Road near the corner of Monona Drive from 8 until noon. And you may also find all the information you need on the City of Monona's website, just on the homepage there. There's just a tile about the electronics recycling event, so it's fantastic. Saturday, yeah. And I think that brings us to request for city staff, but I think we covered that already. We covered that quite a bit. Our next meeting, May 10th, and then again on June 14th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second by Rick. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.